Pew also recognized that younger people are more dissatisfied than older people. And I believe it's what I've just talked about. They are looking for the opportunities to, one, be valued, have a job that they really are fulfilled in, and they understand and seeing how their parents were operating, coming home, complaining about positions, complaining about their jobs. Even though they might have been working because they needed to and they were providing for their families, they did not want to be there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another session of Strategies for Creatives. My name is Chris Branham, and today we are continuing our conversation, employee satisfaction with their jobs. Let's brainstorm. All right, so I've been digging around after my last podcast that I dropped talking about, are you satisfied with your job? Do you have any issues with your job, etc.? And one thing that I found was a very insightful link from Forbes. I thought the information was very, very profound. I'm not sure if I agree with it, all of it, but some of it I definitely do agree with, depending on who you ask and the type of job and environment that you're in. So this link from Forbes had to deal with satisfaction in the job and was it true? Right. So I'm going to drop the link below in the comments so you can definitely check it out at your leisure. And there's two other links as well. There's one from the Gallup polls, which deals with a lot of information and data gathering and asking a bunch of information and surveys for employees to figure out what they think, their thoughts, etc. And then the other one is from Pew. I believe I'm saying that right. PEW. And they also did a poll as well. Those two links will be added as well. So you can definitely check them at your leisure. Definitely fact check what I'm saying. So I want to make sure everybody's clear and concise on the information. There was a lot of detailed information that was given, and the information had to deal with several different points and categories. It was a short article, so it was maybe about 5 or 6 different paragraphs, but the paragraphs were chunked out pretty well. First paragraph had to deal with how Americans are engaged. So the majority of workers are satisfied with their jobs and the benefits. The interesting part about this is it was more than 3/4, so around 79% of individuals were satisfied. Now, here's the thing. Depending on who you ask and the individuals and the type of job, that may be skewed information. If it's corporate individuals or they're not member facing, that might play a role within the information and the data. Again, you couldn't see exactly who they were. It didn't give you a breakdown, detailed list, or at least I didn't see it in the logo, in the link or the website. But what was interesting was I work in corporate America. I definitely have a job in corporate America, one of the largest banks, and I've noticed several things. There's a ton of bureaucracy. And there's also some nepotism depending on who you ask and the type of environment and department that you're in. Not every department is the same. Not every manager or supervisor is the same, but you hear certain things. And the thing about corporate America is either if the environment is good, they will be able to speak their mind to the managers, the individuals, the higher ups, if the freedom is built in, if that's the environment that has been created and the culture for that department. Now, there might be a grandiose culture within the entire organization, but you might not see it, right? It might be spoken about at large events and, from CEOs and, stakeholders and presidents and founders. But again, if that is not the same heart and spirit of the supervisor in that department, it might not be conveyed very well. So this is why I look at some of these data gathering tools to see, is this individuals that feel like they have the capability to give their opinion without being chastised or feeling afraid or fearful of their positions. Some of the other interesting facts within this was they also asked them, do they feel safe in their environments? And the polls came back about 50% people felt safe. But there were other areas that people kind of felt safe. They weren't afraid of losing their jobs, or they did not feel like their job was at risk. Now, that also speaks to another level of culture, depending on the department. Now, if the individuals have freedom and they have an open door policy and they're able to go to their boss about certain issues or even go to their boss about something that they've done, right? Not them particularly, but the boss has done something. That is another area of culture which is not exactly common. And when I say common, I mean the open door policy can say, yeah, you can come to me and talk to me about your issues, but can you really come to me and talk about my issues? Meaning you're giving me critical feedback, you're giving me some type of insight that I may have overlooked, but that is a personal development thing. That is the individual having enough, what's the word? Comfort within themselves and wanting to grow as individuals to now develop themselves over time. And they're really willing to take critical information and critique. That is something that's not learned from every individual. That is something that's learned over time. Now, there might be tools and availability for learning exercises and conferences to go to beat and expound upon being a leader or a manager. But again, I think I mentioned that in the last video where a lot of individuals didn't feel like their managers had those type of tool sets, or they didn't think that they went through them. Again, that's cultural based. So how you're developing your culture and how you're developing yourself is two large individual pieces that may not be specifically exemplified or shown in that environment. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. I just want to give you a quick message. I have a SKOOL community called Strategies for Creatives, and this is an environment specifically for creative individuals that want to leverage all of their talents, gifts, and skill sets. So if you don't know what they are, this is where you can discover them. If you do know what they are, this is where you can master them, you can leverage them, and now you can produce results with them. And that's going to be a community environment. So you can leverage and talk to other individuals, talk to myself, and then there'll also be masterminds, free courses, free links, things that you cannot get on YouTube. The community is currently free right now, but it will not be free for long. It will be a paid subscription. That means you will have to pay something for it if you want to get complete access. You will get some access in the free area, but if you want the full amount of information, it will be a paid subscription. Hope to see you guys in there. Let's brainstorm. One of the other areas that they talked about was the amount of money that they were receiving. So again, depending on who you're asking, people felt like it was fair, they was getting what they asked for. But another poll within the Pew had mentioned that most African American individuals felt like they were not being honored fairly, or they felt discriminated against based on the type of job or position that they were going for. So if they felt discriminated, that means money was also involved, positioning was also involved, some type of placement or the ability to move in fluidity within the organization, right? So that also is something to take in consideration, because if you don't feel like you're being honored, or it might be a little skewed based on how they're picking and choosing individuals to move within the organization or being hired, that is also something to take in consideration. So those two areas, as far as Gallup poll and Pew, kind of see slightly different, but they were still on the same page, which was that overall employees were satisfied with their position. Now, this is really key to me, because when I look at another area, as far as the survey is concerned, I'm going to read a portion of it, and hopefully you can get a little bit more insight. In Pew's 2023 survey, for example, 2/3 of older workers said they were satisfied with their jobs. That dropped to 44 from those ages 18 to 29 years. So when you're looking at that information, older is 40 and up, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, depending on where they are in their position. Now, something that I realized within that type of environment is older individuals were more satisfied with their positions because the values were different. When our parents were growing up, I'm 38, my parents, my grandparents, even great-grandparents, they had different values from current individuals, right? 20, 29 and down, 18, 17, 16, the millennials, right? Our values are more or less what we can do. And this is skewed from just my viewpoint. What we can do, what we want to do for ourselves, what we want to do for our current family, things that we want to buy, things that we want to grow. A lot of people are chasing the bag, trying to build organizations and businesses, etc. So when you're thinking about that information and the values of our parents, they were looking more for stability, for understanding that they do want to build families, which is the same, values that we have, but it was a little different. It was sometimes the parent wanted one person to work, which usually was the father. The mother stayed home, and then they wanted to educate and help develop the children within that environment. They wanted to make sure the house was a stable environment versus two parents working in the home, right? That was something that I noticed specifically. My mom, she tried it. They both tried to work together, but then ultimately she came home. She did work for a little bit and did her homework in office, but at the same time, she was more hands-on with our development as younger children, meaning that she was helping develop us. So when we did go to school, we had a lot of basic skills and understanding. We could read, we could write. There were several things that we were able to do to communicate really well. Our speech and behavior was a lot different from a two-parent home and one parent being specifically in the home and the other one working. When you go even further back with our grandparents, and that is the 60s, 70s, those are ready to retire and have retired, the baby boomers. Those are the individuals that saw values even more differently and more stable within the home environment. They were looking to build homes, to build families. Their focus was family dynamics. My parents, it was family dynamics, but it was a little bit more family dynamics and business minded, at least for my home. My father, he was business minded. My mom was business minded. So we also understood the value of being entrepreneurs and understanding that there was another way to build rather than just work, because they started seeing some of the significance with building wealth and being able to create an environment that allowed them to have more freedom, which was entrepreneurship. So they had jobs, but they also had businesses. And that was something a difference from my grandparents. They did not have businesses, they had jobs. One of my grandparents was in the military. Another one, she worked a 9 to 5, and she was a OBGYN secretary for Ohio State, and she retired from that. My parents did not retire. They started their own businesses. They created their wealth. They did what they did, and they kind of moved on. So the values switched in that era. Now we have a lot more self-made millionaires, or at least we would like to say self-made millionaires, but individuals that are looking for other avenues rather than working a 9 to 5. So a lot of information that they're gathering is from individuals that desire to have a position, and nothing's wrong with that. You can still build wealth. You can still create generational wealth from actually having a job. And most people don't believe that, but it's very true. There's several ways to do it. You can do it by saving, building a Roth IRA, your 401k, as well as other specific areas as far as putting money aside, health insurance policies, etc. So there's ways to build wealth. You may not see it in a lump as you're working as an employee. As an employer, meaning an entrepreneur, you may see that wealth graduate a little faster because you are building wealth rather than obtaining wealth from someone giving you a paycheck, and they've already set your bar. Now, you can set your bar at any level as an entrepreneur, but again, it's going to take a lot more work, a lot more time, and that's where the values start changing, because your time, your effort, and your energy is being split between family and business. And one of them is not going to get your time depending on what time of day it is, how you're working, the type of job that you're doing, and you're going to see those things suffer. That's why I said the values based on the information and the items that they're gathering may be slightly different based on the age groups. Pew also recognized that younger people are more dissatisfied than older people. And I believe it's what I've just talked about. They are looking for the opportunities to, one, be valued, have a job that they really are fulfilled in, and they understand and seeing how their parents were operating, coming home, complaining about positions, complaining about their jobs. Even though they might have been working because they needed to and they were providing for their families, they did not want to be there. That's something that I saw as well. And it made it a little bit more difficult to buy into the fact of working somewhere. If I knew I was coming home and I was stressed and I didn't have the excitement about my position or the excitement about what I was doing, what is that telling the next generation? I don't want to be there. Is there another way? I'm looking for an out before I even start the position. So when we're going to college and our parents are pushing college on us and telling us we should go because we need that education in order to get a quality job, we got a quality job, but we realize we hate it. We realize that it's not the best job. It's not something that's going to be fulfilling or gravitate to our creativity and help us be creative individuals in the scope of our talents, gifts, and abilities. So then what we're really looking at is, what do we really want to do after we've graduated? After we got the diploma and got all this education that we really don't even use, or we realize that it's not going to benefit us the way that we thought, and it's only going to benefit us to a certain level or a cap, Now you're looking for something else to do, which is this is where people start running to entrepreneurship, opening their own businesses, trying to be social media experts and gurus, building those type of funnels of wealth building opportunities and systems and tools. But you have to still put the work in. And this is where some of the dynamics and the values have changed over time, where our parents had the value of work and so did our grandparents. But when we look at our values, is our value of work the same? Even though we're seeing different opportunities for building wealth and education, and you have all these tools like AI and other, formulated products that can help you build them that are systems, are you really also putting the work in? Because the systems can't do it all for you. Just because you have a tool, just because you have an outlet or a product does not mean it's going to put the work in for you. It may be doing some of the work that you have programmed it to do. But if you are planning for it to be working while you're asleep, you have to put a lot of front end work for the back end results. And that is something that I've noticed with this generation, Gen Zs, Gen Xs as well, where you are not putting as much effort in as our parents did, even though they did not like where they were. Now, if you can mix that with what you desire to do, your creativity, your capabilities, your desires and talents, you will have fulfillment, but you will also have the bag, meaning you will have the wealth to do what you desire to do and to put that away so you can build it for generations to come. That is something that is different. And that's what I've noticed within this information and this data. Another part that they looked at was the public mood is poor, meaning their mood about the economics, their mood about the environment, and I'm speaking specifically about the United States. Now, I realize that other economic areas and countries also have a lot of issues going on, whether it's currency. Inflation is not just in the United States, everybody. It's everywhere. Everybody is dealing with inflation because so many of our governments have been printing and doing what they desire rather than building economic stable environment for the people, which is really important and key. More printing of money, more printing of information that is not backed. And fiat currency allows that to happen rather than the gold standard, which was changed in the early 70s. So when you look at what's happening, people's mood about the government, about presidencies, about voting has all changed in the last 10 years, I would say, because you're getting this next generation that's coming up and the capabilities to learn, educate, and social media has given so much more information and pushed it on us. There's no way for you to really not pay attention to it. You're seeing it regardless if you want to or not. And when your mood changes about your environment, it's very hard for you to go to the job whistling and being happy about what you're doing, especially if it's something that you don't even desire to do in the first place. So when you have a position and you're making good money and you went to college and you've now had the position that, quote unquote, you say you want, or your parents say that it's good for you, now you're in it and they're just like, well, just work and do what's necessary. But you're like, but what about the economics? What about the economy? What is it about that me working is going to help me in the long run? I can't even buy a house, even though I'm making 70,000 plus a year or more. And I'm not even qualified to own a home, or the home prices are double or triple the amount of what my parents paid. I was lucky enough to grab a home that was $105,000. That was 5 years ago. So you can imagine now that my house, we did renovations, etc., and the comps in the neighborhood has pushed every last home to at least 200 to 235. So that shows you just in the last 5 years what's happening. So you can imagine what's going on for the next generation and those that are just getting out of college. Their economic understanding and their environment is totally different from what's expected from what our parents had. So when you put all of that into the realm of working, this is why I said, depending on who you're asking, from this type of information, from the Gallup polls and the Pew, those things could be skewed because they could be asking older individuals, or if they are asking younger individuals, they're also thinking not just about their positions, they're thinking about their livelihood. And that plays a huge role into why it's so important for you to be fulfilled and to operate in your gifts, talents, and abilities and skill sets. Because if you're not doing that, you're just working to be working. And work is considered a big part of our identity. I can't stress this enough because this is something that I've noticed from so many people. They find their identity in work. Now, there's nothing wrong with finding identity, but there is something finding identity in work. And here's why I say that. If you're identifying yourself with a job, what happens when you get fired? What happens when you no longer are doing your best at that position? What happens if your mind changes about that position and that job that you've worked so hard to gain and to gather? This happens all the time. People get laid off. And if your identity is in it, now you have to deal with depression, frustration, anxiety, feeling like you're not good enough to know how to do the job, or you thought you were, and now you're coming to the realization that you weren't, or they didn't think you were. That is something very hard to battle with. I would caution everyone not to find identity in positions, but find it in yourself. Find it in your creativity. Find it in who you are as a creative individual first. And also, if you're a believer and a follower of God and Christ, find it in Him. The one that actually originated you is going to help you figure out your identity. And your identity is what He has given you. So that is positioning in Him, that is positioning in your creativity, meaning that you are an expert. You should be going towards the journey of expert and master in all things creative that you have been given, right? Your God-given gifts, your talents, but the things that you can expound on, the things that you can build off of, those things as well is going to help you educate yourself to really find fulfillment, to know your purpose in life. And that is where I look at all this data and understand some people find their purpose in their positions, but the majority of us are not looking in the right direction. Your purpose starts with what you're designed to do. If I have a hammer, I cannot use that hammer as a wrench. It would be very difficult. I would be using the tool inappropriately, and I could cause myself more harm, or the thing I'm working on, destroy it, because I'm not using it in a proper function. That is every individual. There is some people that have specific uses and specific scenarios that they are really good at: problem solving, education, understanding, teaching. All of those things are very different for every individual. But if you do not know how to hone into those, you could be a hammer acting as a wrench. You could be something that you're not. You could be operating in an area that you're not. And this is some of the problematic areas, because you see so much of society asking you and telling you and pick this course and watch this and do this and etc. And you're following all the trends because you're doing one of two things. You're chasing someone else's dream and you're negating yours, or you see that theirs is more attractive and yours is not. And that's where the information that is being given from people looking at their jobs and the positions is very dangerous, because how did you get in that position in the first place? What was the why? And this is what I talked about in the last episode. And if you desire, go back and watch that podcast. It's the second one. What is the why? What is the meaning? What is the purpose of what you're doing? And how did you gain that knowledge in order to pick that position? Did you do it because someone else told you to, whether it was a parent or someone you trusted, or even an educator or a specific professor told you to go in a direction because they saw something in you? But the question is, did you pause, think about it, and said, is this going to be fulfilling for me? And the question that some people might have asked, well, how do I know if it's going to be fulfilling? Well, does it match what you're good at? And if you don't know what you're good at, and you don't know what your talent, gifts, and skill sets are, I would say start learning them. Start understanding them. Start exploring what they could be. And this takes time. This is not an overnight thing that we desire to have because we're looking at economics and how things are moving so fast and we're in a rush. Enjoy the journey. The journey of building and understanding who you are is greater than the end goal, because the end goal will take a lifetime. And once you hit the end goal, that's it. Are you going to plan for another one, or are you going to stay where you are? So I would suggest to every last person, find out what they are, enjoy the moment, enjoy the journey, because that is what life is really about. That dash in between birth and death, that's life. So enjoy the life journey. This also speaks to self-worth. What do you think you're worth? When people say that they really enjoy their jobs and they're finding, their livelihood and their understanding identity in their positions, they're saying that the job is defining who they are and how much they're worth. I would say you define that. This is where negotiation is a part of the process of being hired. This is negotiation even in entrepreneurship, how you talk to individuals, the prices that you set. Are you willing to negotiate up or down, right? But it's based on the value. It's based on your value. It's based on the amount of energy, time, and effort that you're putting in. And is it related to what you're doing? Is it related to your gifts? Is it related to your time and effort? Or is it something that you're just doing for a means to an end? This is something that you have to negotiate. And I would say, in closing, whatever you're desiring to do, Don't let your job define you. Make sure that you're defining yourself before you rush into a career. And it doesn't matter what age. It could be straight out of college. It could be 2 years. It could be 5 years. You could be very successful currently. But I would say every few years, evaluate, if not monthly, if not quarterly, yearly, annually. Evaluate where you are. Do you still feel the same way about your position? Do you still feel like you're maximizing on your talents, gifts, and abilities? If you're not, I would caution you to say, hey, let me put a pin in this. Let's see what I'm really looking at and what I really should be focused on. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you will find fulfillment, you will find creativity, and you will be successful no matter what you do. Peace.